Hello readers, I have got a really good book for you today, and it is another fiction book, and it is about a dog. And a lot of people have dogs as pets, and they become part of our family. They live with us in our homes. Sometimes they sleep inside or live inside, and we get really attached to our dogs. That means we really love them and we feel like they're part of our family. And today's story is about a girl and her dog, and because it's a narrative, we know that it's going to have a problem that needs to be solved. So all narratives have an orientation that tells us who's in the story, where's the story set, what's going to happen. Then we have a problem or a complication, or maybe two problems, and then it usually gets solved by the end of the book. So this story is called Lost One Green Dog. I've never seen a green dog, have you? What an unusual situation to be in, to own a green dog. So we're going to have a look at this picture book today. We can tell it is fiction because of the style of pictures, because the fact it's about a green dog, and also because we know that any book that was for information would have photos or pictures that are drawn to look like a diagram, to look like something that's going to give us information. But if it's just there to make us enjoy the story, then we know it's going to be fiction, because a fiction is to entertain or to teach us something sometimes, but usually it's through a made-up story. So I hope you like Lost One Green Dog. There are some interesting words that are used in this picture book, and I'm going to put them up on the screen. But I don't want you to worry about all those words now, because as the story goes along, we'll explain what they mean. It's good to learn new words because then you can use them in your writing as well to make your writing interesting. I hope you learned some new words today, and I hope you like the story. This is a map of where the story takes place. It's kind of like we're up in a plane looking down on the street, and you can see some houses. You can see a person riding a bike with a dog. You can see two birds sitting on a roof, and you can see two joggers with a dog. There's a man walking into his house. He's obviously collected the mail, and there's lots of rubbish bins around. It must be rubbish bin collection day. You could make an aerial map of your house and street. Aerial means from above. Lost one green dog. Can you see those two dots? That's called a colon, and it means that a list of items or a single item is going to come after it. And we can see that a very strange thing is happening in this story. The dog is green. We know it's a fiction story because dogs are never green. There was once a green dog called James. Can you see James? James is a very smart dog because he is playing checkers with his owner. His owner, Sarah, loved him very much. Green was her favourite colour, but she worried that her neighbours' dogs might chase James if they saw he was green. So she always kept him indoors. He doesn't look very happy about the fact that he has to stay indoors, does he? She's trying to protect him. There he is painting a picture. So a dog that plays checkers and paints pictures. James was most unhappy. He couldn't run in the park. He couldn't play fetch. And he couldn't chase cats. So he's looking very sad there. We can see that his eyes look sad, and he's got his hands on his face to show that he's sad. And his poor owner looks very concerned about him. She's just trying to protect him.
Every morning as Sarah left for school, she would remind James, that means tell him again so he doesn't forget, "Don't forget, James, you mustn't go outside. You're a green dog and you'll only end up in trouble." So the speech marks help us to know that she is actually talking to the dog. But one morning, I think this part might be the complication of the story, the problem that we often find in a narrative. But one morning, James decided he was going out. He didn't care about the neighbours' dogs, not one little bit. He's looking a bit cheeky there. This is his owner, Sarah, reminding him, telling him so he doesn't forget that he's not to go outside. Your mum or dad or carer might remind you of something, or your teacher might remind you of something so that you don't forget. No sooner had Sarah turned the corner than out zoomed James. Zoomed means went very fast. Past the neighbours' dogs and cats, James leapt and jumped and bounded. So leapt means another word for jump up in the air, and bounded is like bouncing up and down or running very fast with kind of getting up really high in the air when you're running. So those kinds of movements show that he's happy and excited to be outside. He is leaping, jumping and bounding. Now if we look close, the other people are a bit concerned. Look at the look on some of the people's faces when they see the dog. Sometimes we have to watch the pictures in the story to help us understand what the story is about. And the reactions of the people are telling us that they think it is very strange to see a green dog. Even the dogs think it's strange. Even this butterfly is a bit shocked. But when it says that James didn't care, look at his face. Everybody else is very concerned, but he's so happy to. We need to remember that this is the complication of the narrative. A narrative is a made-up fiction story, and we have the beginning or the orientation when we learn who's in the story, where the story is set, and what is happening. So we learnt about Sarah and James, which are the main characters. The complication started when James snuck out of the house, and here comes his big problem. Before he could get very far, James found himself cornered. That means kind of forced into a corner by a gang of noisy dogs. So a big scary group of dogs. Oh no, thought James. Sarah was right. I am a green dog and now I am in trouble. And if you have a look here, oh no, we still use speech marks even when a character is thinking something. We can see that he's cornered. That means surrounded by dogs on all sides and backed into the corner of the fence. And look at his face. That's showing us how he feels. So the problems that James has had so far in this story is that he's green, that his owner wanted to protect him by keeping him home, which made him sad, and the fact that he escaped, and then the fact that he thought he was going to be hurt by those gang of dogs that surrounded him or cornered him. But here is a twist in the story. But to James's surprise, the dogs didn't want to chase him. They simply wanted to admire. That means look at his beautiful fur and think that it was really beautiful. If you admire something, you like it. What an exquisite shade of green, said a basset. How did you do it? said a spaniel, which is another type of dog that often has curly ears like the grey one in the front. How much did it cost? Inquired a poodle, which is the white dog behind James. Oh, do tell us your secret, begged all the dogs at once. James didn't know what to say. Come back in a week and I'll show you, he promised. Now there's some interesting words that we have seen in this part of the story that we can use instead of said. So the first part was, what an exquisite shade of green, said a basset. But then we have asked, inquired, which is another way of saying asked, begged, that means they really wanted to know. So there's lots of different words that you can use instead of said. And I'm going to put some up on the screen for you so you can read them. Maybe you could use them in your stories. Now we've come across another complication in the story, because James now has created his own problem. Sometimes the characters create the problem themselves. Now James had a problem. There is no secret, he thought. I was born green, green as grass. That gave him an idea. So he's told the other dogs he's going to come back and explain next week. So he's got to come up with an explanation. He was just born that way. He picked as many plants and flowers as he could find. That's his thinking face. And he set up a laboratory in an empty garage nearby. A laboratory is like a science lab where you do experiments or create things. He crushed the flowers and ground the leaves. So ground is when you make them into a really small pieces, usually with some kind of tool. He's using a mortar and pestle to do it. He mixed and measured and weighed. So he measured how much there was and he weighed how much they weighed using an equal arm balance. You might have seen that in your maths class when you are measuring some objects. He actually looks like a scientist now, and how funny that he's wearing glasses. He's using a beaker, which is the containers that we see in science labs, and he's using a dropper to put the liquid in. He worked day and night until at last in front of him stood a set of beautiful rainbow colours. He wrote on the labels. So he's making some kind of dog dye, pigments for dog use, 100% organic, allergy tested and fragrance free. Pigments means colour. Now I've got something to show them, he thought. With my pigments, dogs can be whatever colour they liked. Pigments is like another word for dyes or paints or colour. And so they were. Dogs of the most unusual colours, which means strange and different, could now be seen around the town. Pink dogs and red dogs and orange dogs and purple dogs. James was so busy colouring dogs that he didn't notice Sarah when she went past, putting up notices. Lost. One green dog. Sarah had been looking for James. When Sarah saw James, she threw her arms around his neck. That means she gave him a really big hug. James, at last I've found you, she cried. You are the most wonderful green dog in the world. Can you see the exclamation marks here? That means you give a lot of emphasis. James, At last I found you, she cried. It shows a lot of feeling in what she's saying. And you must be a real business dog now, she added. What a long queue of customers. That means a long line of people waiting. You might go into a queue in a shop or at the school canteen. I'll give you a hand. I can help you after school and at weekends. We'll start right away. There they are working together, and there's the dog with his arm up getting his very unusual and beautiful colour put on. As the sun set that day, dozens of dogs wearing the most extravagant designs could be seen strolling into town. A dozen is 12, so dozens of dogs means huge numbers of dogs. And extravagant designs means beautiful and interesting and very lovely and wonderful. And they're strolling into town. Strolling is another word for walking. So as the sun set that day, dozens of dogs wearing the most extravagant designs could be seen strolling into town. They were pink and red and orange and purple, checkered and striped and polka dots. Checkered means checks, squares. Stripes is just long stripes of a single colour, and polka dots are dots. So there's all the paints they've been using. Boy, she looks a bit tired, doesn't she? Now James has a beautiful, unusual look on his face, and the story tells us. But James seemed a bit thoughtful. He's thinking. I was just wondering, he said to Sarah, now that I'm just plain green, could we go and play frisbee the way the other dogs do? So really, now that he has solved his problem, so this is the resolution of the problem. We use the word resolution sometimes in a narrative. It means when the problem gets fixed. We find out that really all he wanted to do was be a normal dog and not stand out from the others. So since he's just plain green and everybody is checkered and striped and polka dotted, he just wants to go and play frisbee with his owner. You bet, cried Sarah, and off they went together to the park. You bet means yes, definitely. And she's not crying as in sad, but she cried, you bet. It's just a way of saying said with a loud voice with lots of feeling. So there they are, playing frisbee. It's a very happy ending. This is the same aerial map that we saw at the start, but now there's so many colourful dogs.